Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Deva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Okay, welcome to Daily Satsang. We are continuing our exploration of the Shiv Tattva, Bhagwan Shiv. And we are going to move ahead now further. We were talking about the third eye, the actual opening of the third eye. So it's very interesting because we want greater vision, greater understanding. So today we're going to look at a quotation from a scripture called the Maha Nirvana Tantra. I'm going to try to explain what this is all about. When Bhagwan Shankar is depicted as, with all of his depictions, there is this third eye opening. So the opening of the third eye also has meaning with reference to the word Tantra. So what does this word actually mean? We've heard it a lot, and I'm going to try to go into that today. The word Tantra is an ancient word that is from Sanskrit, of course, and it has to do with the notion of wrapping and weaving together different pieces of experience, all pieces of experience of reality, all weaved together. That is called Tantra. That is the essence. Now it has also been translated in many other ways. So in terms of the actual texts, there are many texts that use this word, from the Rig Veda to the Sam Veda to the Atharva Veda, Yajur Veda, and it all refers to this notion of obtaining a deeper understanding, a thread that runs through experience. It is referring to also the ability of a sadhaka to capture diverse experiences and pull them together. So that's the essence of that word. There's quite a bit more to it. Also, the word in English is sometimes pronounced as tantra or tantra, like that. The actual pronunciation is tantra, which is the bringing together within oneself, looking at oneself, the bringing together of diverse experiences without any kind of distortion and seeing their interconnectedness. So there is an extraordinary scripture called the Maha Nirvana Tantra. This is some 400 to 500 pages long, translated. It is in Sanskrit, of course, but it has been translated by multiple authors. And this is just one of the quotes actually from that scripture, that Bhagwan Shiv, or God, in so many ways we can think of it, Parashiva, Paramatma, it is described this way: you have no form, even though with the help of Maya you take on myriads of forms. You have no beginning, though you are the beginning of all. It is you who creates, upholds, and dissolves the world. So now what is this referring to? And this whole discussion about form and formless, as well as taking on the myriad of forms, what is all of that? So, as we mentioned before, that the Atma Chaitanya, doesn't have any form. It is Nirakara. It is formless. So, in one sense, this is describing that the Jivatma that doesn't have a form, it takes on multiple forms, just as we've done right now. There's a physical form of this body. So, and of course, any form, whenever we're using the word form, that means akar or sakar. Sakar means with form, sa-akar. That is something perceptible to our senses. But that which is not within the purview of our senses in most of the scriptures is called Nirakar. Nirakar means not these worldly forms. So that is why it is called Nirakar. Nir means without form. So the Atma doesn't have form. This point should be clear. But the Atma, because of its association with Maya, through the help of Maya or through the influence of Maya, it takes on multiple forms. Now that's for the Jivatma that we're talking about. In this verse, it could be applied to both the Jivatma as well as the Parashiva. So from the point of where we are in the expressions of Maya, that which is beyond, that Shiv Tattva that is beyond, is beyond all of these forms that we see. That is why it says you have no form. Whenever we see in the scriptures there's no form, it refers to these forms in the world today. Now, in the Tantra perspective, which is integrative, it is not rejecting the worldly experience. It is not rejecting anything, actually. It's taking the range of experiences and pulling them together. Alright, so that we've talked about that before also. But interestingly, there is also the meaning of taking diverse perspectives and pulling them together and threading them together. This word Tantra is actually even used one time only in the scripture that is known as Vachanamrutam, and it is used in the context of scriptures. And there's a particular quote there where Maharaj himself stated that Vasudev Bhagwan took multiple scriptures and he combined them together. In Gujarati he said, "Nu Tantra karyu." Tantra means it's the combination, weaving together, pulling together. It's a synthetical complementary approach. That is actually the meaning of this word Tantra. But people have misunderstood it because of the association with the left-handed, the Vam Marga practices of tantric sex. So as a result of that, people think that Tantra is just that, and that's not the case. That's a whole different subject, which we will at some point cover when we cover Brahmacharya. So what that's all about is an extensive discussion. Definitely we will get to that. And I'll probably wind up creating some independent recordings apart from our daily satsang, because it will take hours and hours to explain it. But the point here is that in our life, we also do not have a beginning or an end. That is the most interesting thing. When we look at ourselves in the mirror, what do we see? When we look at ourselves in the mirror, we see a form, right? We say, oh, this is Sachin, this is my hair, and these are my eyes, and this, okay. That is a form that is seen through the senses. But the realization of the Atma is such that the Atma Chaitanyam, the Jivatma, it doesn't have any particular form as such. And that is one of the most interesting pieces to understand with regards to spiritual evolution. Yes, through sadhana, through karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, dhyan yoga, etc., we can evolve our energies and our mind by the grace of God, by devotional practices, etc., to eventually come upon the Atma. The Atma begins to shine and reveal itself. The shining and the revelation of itself is what we said yesterday also, that is Satchidananda. So, does that mean that one is against the body or against the function of the body? No. Some people have done that, but that's not the meaning. The body and the mind are a tremendous aid to the realization of the Atma. And the diversity of experiences available through the body and the mind. Take music, for example. There are so many different musical instruments. They all are different in their own way, but they have the same notes. See the emotions, the experiences evoked from music. All of that is part of the mind and the body's experience and the brain's experience. The brain is involved in that. So Shiv Upasana and Shakti Upasana, Shiv Shakti Bhakti also, even if you're not doing Upasana, you can do Bhakti. It doesn't reject the enjoyments of the world. This is what's different about this. In many other paths, many other devotional paths, even within Sanatana Dharma, there is a restriction placed in only keeping the mind connected with devotional activity, spiritual activity, stay away from many of the worldly things like that. Many paths are like that. Even Swaminarayan Sampradaya is like that. Other Vaishnava Sampradayas, many paths are like that. But the Shiva path or the Shiv Tattva in its entirety also has that path. But it also has many other paths. When you pull them all together, it doesn't reject the experience of the world. Even what they would say, the adepts in the Shiv Upasana, they would say that even if you're doing bhajan, kirtan, any kind of devotional practice, you're doing it with the body and the mind and the senses. How else are you doing it? So that is still within the realm of the senses and the mind. The question would become what to input inside the mind and what not to. That's a different question. That comes later. But first, to see the experience in its entirety and to recognize that the world does have enjoyments. That is sukha. Remember we said sukh and dukh, that they are dualities, the pleasures and the pains. Yes, they are there. So let's not. So what in the Tantra tradition, the approach that is taken is not to reject pleasure, but interestingly, not to run after pleasure to the level of hedonism. Hedonism is the belief that the only purpose of life is more and more pleasure. The more you can get, the better off you are going to be. There's nothing else. More sex, more money, more power, more this, more that, more sense enjoyment, more food, more trips, more cars, more of everything. That is called hedonism. So Tantra is not hedonism. And this point should be very, very clear. Hedonism, if you take hedonism, somebody who believes in hedonism is going to probably wind up in very serious addictions or wind up damaging their mind, body, and their brain. And we see that. But there are individuals who actually do believe that. But they would also have to recognize the fact that all material pleasures, as intense as they can be, have a limitation around them. So hence, if you look at the Maha Nirvana Tantra quotation that we have, you have no form, even though with the help of Maya you take on myriads of forms. Taking on the myriads of forms is to be perceived by the sadhaka. That the Shiv Tattva has taken on multiple forms, and we are experiencing that because we are in the Jiva state right now. So the experience of the myriad of forms is the glorious expression of Maya, and it is divine. Daivi yesha gunamayi. Bhagavad Gita. Mama Maya duratya. Mama Maya duratya mameva prapadyante maya metam tarantite. Meaning that, but the myriads of forms are not the problem. Our obsessive entanglement in them is the problem. Is the bandhan, is the bondage. Whether you want to call it a problem or not is a different matter. But the obsessive entanglement in forms, as opposed to the playing with the forms as a lila. Now since we're talking about Shiva, Sachin is going to talk about Shiva as it is. No distortion, no dilution, no diversion. Shiv Shakti does not reject the world. Let's be clear. It doesn't reject the enjoyments of the world. And it also doesn't reject the pains of the world. It does both. It doesn't reject the ego, it doesn't reject vasanas, it doesn't reject anything actually. Because it is the full purview of human experience. It doesn't reject the euphoria obtained from great achievements, and it doesn't reject the pain and suffering and damage that occurs by running after the myriads of forms of Maya. It asks the sadhaka to see the whole realm, and in the perception of the whole realm of the polarities and dualities of the myriads of experiences within the realm of Maya. In that vision of seeing the entire realm of experience through sadhana and bhajan, bhakti and guru kripa, one evolves back into that state outside the forms of Maya. You have no beginning, though you are the beginning of all. It is you who creates, upholds, and dissolves the world. How beautiful, how amazing. So the ability to interact, the capability, the ability, and the wisdom to interact with the diverse world, seeing the waves come and go like in the ocean, and masterfully riding them, seeing them throughout, and weaving the experience together rather than getting torn by the experience, is the essence of Tantra. And that is what we see in Shivji, Bhagwan Shiv. We see him weave it all together. Everything is woven together. Everything. He's a brahmachari, but he's a grahastha. How can that be? He's got Mahashakti, Parvati with him, and he's a brahmachari. He's got two children, Kartika and the Kartikeya Swami and Bhagwan Ganeshji. It's the grahastha, the modality of grahastha. He's the Yogeshwar of all yogas. He is one who shows tremendous anger sometimes. And he also showers endless compassion and boons. Seems contradictory. It seems contradictory. He is the god of death, but he is also one who saves one from death. Maha Mrityunjay mantra. It all seems contradictory, but it's not. It is integrated within himself, and that is why he is the ultimate Tantra master in terms of Prakriti, in terms of the evolution of Prakriti. That is why he is called Mahadev. Even the Devatas cannot understand who is Shiva. How are we going to understand? It is the most extraordinary realization. The realization that every form that we see is a glorious expression, and to cherish creation. See, Shiva is the god of destruction in that sense, in one sense. But it is only through the destruction that always the new creation is there. The appreciation of the destruction of the material world, to appreciate that, the pralays we talked about, Nitya pralay, Naimitik pralay, Prakrut pralay, to appreciate that, to see that, to accept that, not to be disturbed by that, is an evolution of vision, and that is also part of the integrated process, that we can see the dissolution, and in the dissolution we are free. This is the beautiful teaching in this Tantra, in the Maha Nirvana Tantra. These ideas are in other scriptures in the Gita, Vachanamrutam also. They are there in the Upanishads. They are there in many ways in Vedanta scriptures. But all that is emphasized here is the direct perception through our senses and then our mind and our contemplation of the expression of Maya. That that the Jivatma takes on myriad forms, different bodies and all and whatnot. And when we see the tremendous expression of Maya, there is a great humility. There is the tremendous adoration for that great power that has created this phenomenal existence that we see around us. And then, in that adoration of Prakriti, that adoration of the forms of Maya, we see that all the time. Look at Bollywood and all these things. What do we see? Look at all the different film actors and actresses and all these things throughout the world, not just Bollywood and all that, but you look at everywhere, A to Z in human history. We see the pursuit of those forms that are attractive. That's true with cars, it's true with homes, it's true with everything in life. And it's the running after the attractive forms. So what Shiva is teaching us is that see the wave of attraction within yourself and let it dissolve back into the Atma. The flowering and the dissolving of the energy of desire. The flowering of it and the dissolving of it. This is described by J. Krishnamurti in the last dialogue with Anderson, Professor Anderson. It's on YouTube actually. But now, so the point is that is called Sakshi Bhav. The witnessing of the phenomena and experiencing the phenomena while witnessing. That is Tantra. There is not yoga. Yoga is different from this in some sense. There's a connection. Yoga will say stay away from the experience and connect with God. Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyan Yoga. Stay away from the experience that is pulling you and connect with God. That's a different path. Like Ashtanga Brahmacharya. We'll talk about the Shivling in the Brahmacharya and all that later on. What that's all about. This path is a very different kind of path where there is the direct contact with the experience of what Maya is giving, but then there is also simultaneously the pull back into the Atma. Now somebody will say, is that possible? The biggest problem in this, and this is that problem, and is described in Vachanamrut actually, this problem. The biggest problem in trying to do something like this is that the mind gets saturated quickly with the experience of enjoyment that it is looking for, and it immediately wants more of that. In Gujarati language, in Vachanamrutam, Sajanand Swami has explained that problem as manano dushta bhav. He's not talking about that the experience is the problem. It's the mind that is running after that experience because it is taking the energy that is given by God within the mind and running after that experience to the point where it destroys that power within, but that should have been used for higher contemplation and further development. So that destruction of this power that is used in Swaminarayan Sampradaya for ekantik dharma, jnana, vairagya, bhakti, that is the problem. And then so even in the Maha Nirvana Tantra and the Shiv Upasana, what they're saying is that, hold on, if you're going to see the objects that are attracting you, that you have an attraction towards, perceive the nature of attraction and come back to the self that is not attached or that is not engulfed by the myriads of forms that Maya has taken. That is the amazing thing. That you've got all of these forms. Why does Maya exist? People ask this question, and I will be covering that later on. in this series. Why does Maya exist? Maya exists to realize that there is no Maya. That's why Maya exists. Maya exists as a means to realize God. If Maya is not there, how you will realize God? Impossible. And of course, this statement that we see, this quotation from Maha Nirvana Tantra, it is spoken from the highest of stages. That supreme consciousness, when we say you have no form, that is referring to the Nirakara Brahma, the infinite Shiva. The Nirakara Brahma is sometimes called the Parashiva or the infinite Shiva. Different names are there. But you will notice that even in Vachanamrutam, there is this notion that God has a form, which we will cover that later on. So what is the form of God here as well as in transcendental state? We will cover that later. But here, all we are trying to emphasize right now is that when the expressions exist of Prakriti, they are held within from all sides. We can try. This is the biggest meditation. So, when we do the Shiva Upasana, the different mantras and all that, after doing them, sit with that sense that everything is with me. And that's actually what the Chamakam is about. The Rudram and the Chamakam Stotra, the Chamakam mantras, are that everything is mine. What does it mean? It's not an egotistical thing. It means all of reality, I'm sitting with that. I'm in it. There's nothing rejected. All of it is present in its multifarious expression. And we're holding it within. And in holding that within, one is evolving in that meditation back into the Atma. And that evolution back into the Atma is Guru Devo Maheshwaraha. That evolution by holding the forms of Prakriti in the mind and in the body, rather than rejecting them. That is the Tantra approach. It is not about rejecting the forms. It is about holding them and seeing their boundaries, their limitations, their interactions. And by seeing them clearly, without distortion, the vision opens up to see beyond them. That is the approach of Tantra. That approach is misunderstood. And because that direct perception of seeing out of the forms is nearly impossible for most people, unless one has evolved quite a bit. The internal energies of the mind have evolved to such a stage where one is able to perceive or pierce through the veil of Maya. Because people are not evolved to do that, so many other sadhanas, including all of the different yogic sadhanas and the different restrictions that are placed on the senses and other things that people do, they're doing all of that. Why do they restrict the experience of the sansar? Because it is a means to pierce through the veil of Maya by awakening internal power, by restricting the experience of the sansar. See, I hope that point is clear. In reality, in the highest of evolution, there is no pulling towards the sansar, there is no rejection of the sansar, it is perceiving it as is. And in that phenomenal perception, in that total perception, there is in that moment the highest of liberation. Because the mind is no longer hankering after the objects like a poor beggar. See, most people are beggars in this. Beggar meaning what? We're begging after the experiences that Maya is providing. Rather than begging after it, simply say, this experience is tremendous. Let's try to evolve further. Yes, there can be greater experiences, but the inner wealth develops from within. And as the inner wealth develops, one goes from the Jiva to the Shiva. One goes from that inward poverty into the extraordinary kingly state that I am Soham, I am Atma Brahma, Tattvamasi, Pragnananam Brahma, the poverty of the mind dissolves. The poverty of the senses dissolves. The poverty of human interaction and all of its entanglements, the one who is stuck terribly and bound and trapped, dissolves. And one moves in the myriad of forms, as it is said here in the Maha Nirvana Tantra. The myriad of forms. In what way does that person interact? Bhagavad Gita answers that question. Ragadvesha vyuktaistu Vishyan indriyaischaran Atma vaishyera vidaya Atma prasadam vadhigacchati. How beautiful. Without raga and dvesha, one interacts with the whole world. Raga dvesha vyuktaistu Vishyan indriyaischaran. One is moving inside the Vishayas, interacting with them. Raga dvesha vyuktaistu Vishyan indriyaischaran Atma vaishyera vidaya Atma. One is in that interaction. The Atmic consciousness is never forgotten. It's like the lion in the jungle that is running in the jungle, moving in the jungle, never forgets he's the lion. That kind of tremendous strength, infinite power awakens. And the fear, agitation, the inward poverty, the harm that is done in this world because of that inward poverty, it dissolves. And then one comes right back again to who one is, the Shivata state. That is the glory of this scripture, Maha Nirvana Tantra. It is actually a samvad between Devi Parvati and Shivji. Most of these scriptures in Shiv tradition, they're discourses between Shiva and Shakti. And actually, in our life, if we have those, if you're in relationship with someone, as a family member, particularly as husband and wife, let's say, or it's a relationship with your significant other, there's so much to learn from Shiv Shakti, that respectfully listen to each other, respectfully ask each other questions, respectfully grow together, because it is a journey that the couple takes. The Shiv Shakti sadhana, upasana in their life, everything that is manifested, it is most useful for those who are in the grahasthashram. Even for tyagis it is useful, obviously. But those who are the grahasthas, this is they give you the ideal model of the ideal relationship. Such love, such humility, such growth, such the ability to see beyond the form, and it pierce into undisturbed pure love with each other. That is within the couple. That is also shown as the Ardhanareshwar Sarup and many other ways when we talk about the actual Shiv Shakti connection. Alright, so there's so much to be said. This is just only one quote actually, but that's the way it goes. Okay, so we'll stop here for today. We'll continue on the Shiv Tattva tomorrow.